フルアニメーションゲームマシン PC-FX.
The game is FX.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series in the NEC PC-FX, and today we're taking a look at the Last Imperial Prince, which is actually a really good action RPG for the platform. I beat it about 13 years ago when I first owned a PC-FX, and now that I've been playing it again for this capture, I want to beat it all over again. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down there as well. But I really enjoy Last Imperial Prince, even though I don't understand anything going on in the story if I'm not using Google Translate, because unfortunately this is one of the games that have not been translated yet, and it's one that I think is a perfect candidate for it, because while there is a walkthrough online, and you can 100% finish the game with that walkthrough, I wish I knew more of what was going on in the story. But I love this game because it really shows what the PC-FX was able to handle. The anime FMV movies are great, all this parallax scrolling in the foreground, middle ground, and background look really nice, the colors are good, and the audio and soundtrack are quite good as well. What I like about this game is that normally I either like tactical RPGs or action RPGs. The turn-based ones that aren't tactical I've played a ton of, and while I enjoy them for the worlds and the stories that they have, it might not be my favorite genre. So getting something like an action RPG is always a great time, and getting a really good one on a really obscure platform makes it all the better, because I buy this hardware and then I try to look for things to play on it, so when I find something like this, I am really interested in it. But the combat is real time, and as you'll see, I haven't quite gotten good at it yet because it's been about 13 years since I last played this game. But all the combat is, for lack of a better term, rhythm-based. Your opponents have a certain pattern, and the moves that you have will allow you to basically never get hit by the enemy once you learn the pattern and execute the button presses in the right cadence. So there is a lot of skill at getting better at this game and individual enemies, and the minute you feel like you've gotten one enemy's pattern completely down pat, the game's going to throw a bunch of new enemy types at you, and it's going to force you to learn their moves. But you'll see here, like pretty much any game, there has to be an inciting incident. Our heroes are in the forest and they've had a few battles, but something is going to happen to drive the story forward. And that's what happens basically in every RPG game. There has to be something that kicks off the quest. And for what story you can kind of suss out just by what's going on in front of you, it is actually quite intriguing, and I do hope that this game gets a translation one day. If I knew how to speak Japanese, I could certainly handle the coding elements of trying to get this patched up, but unfortunately I don't have the ability to translate it accurately. But you will see that we get a lot of different treasure chests in this forest, and this is just the first part of the game that I'm showing you, because the environments do change up as you go along. What I really like is the touch of having this game in widescreen. That's not something you saw a lot in 4x3 games back in the day, but this is presented basically in 16:9, if not a little bit wider. I'd almost call this CinemaScope. But I love all the graphical elements, how they frame what's going on in front of you. These really nice plants and vines that are framing everything, almost making the game even wider than CinemaScope. It just looks really good. I love the sprite work, and it's something that again feels like Super Nintendo 1.5. I don't think the Super Nintendo could have handled all this sprite work and all the different graphical elements, but it kind of feels somewhere in between that generation and the next generation of video games. But you'll see here as I get a little bit more into the combat, we can run away, but you need to beat these enemies anyway, so even if you run away, you're coming right back to hit them. But now that I've remembered hit and jump away, I'm going to start getting a little bit better at the combat. And that's another thing that I really enjoy about this game, is that you're always learning something new and getting a little bit better at what you're supposed to be doing, and I do appreciate that. And it's one of those things, once you get later areas into the game and the enemies get really bigger, you can have a 2 to 3 minute battle parrying and avoiding your enemy's attacks while trying to get an opportunistic strike in on them, and that's why it really does feel almost like a rhythm game. But the music is also quite good, as well as some of the sound effects, so listen for about 45 seconds and I'll come back and talk more about why this game is something you should definitely check out. But our companion's taking a knife hit, and that's going to drive the story forward. Be right back. So yeah, the music I think is great, but then again, I am totally inclined to like this sort of fantasy setting music. If you've been watching my channel at all, you know I love this kind of genre. But again, the background, the sprite work, everything looks incredible. I think this holds up really well and is really comparable to a lot of the best 16-bit RPGs around, even if this is definitely something that is very, very not well known whatsoever. That's the great thing about a game like this, is that maybe you never heard about it before. Maybe you're looking for a new RPG to play on a system you've never heard of before, because like every other game I've shown on the PC-FX series, this emulates perfectly. I am playing this on an original console like I have been for all the games, but you don't need to buy the hardware like I do to enjoy it. But now that we're in town, different things are going to be happening. We're going to be seeing different enemies, and we're going to start getting some more quests. And when you actually get past this opening area, the game opens up. You have different ways that you can go. You have different options that you can take, and I do like that. But again, we're just getting a little more into the combat, and now I'm really getting almost to the point where I can beat these little ogre enemies without taking a hit, because I've learned their jumping pattern. And that's just what I really appreciate, is this game, the combat feels unlike a lot of other games that I've played before, and it has a really unique edge, and it's probably something that you've never played anything quite like it before. And this is the type of game that I really do hope, like I said earlier, gets translated, because I want to know what's going on in the story, because I love the artwork, I love the music, I love the gameplay. I just wish I knew I was doing the things that I was doing in the game. But you'll see here, now we have these, well, they're kind of like fish head men, and they've got a throwing axe, so now we're going to have to really deal with, you know, long-ranged blocking and figuring out their cadence, because I had just gotten comfortable with the ogre and not taking any hits, and now I'm in a situation where I have to worry about things like that. And I do appreciate that the game always keeps you on your toes. It's not impossibly hard, it's not impossibly easy. It gives you just enough challenge that you're never comfortable, but not so much that you feel like you're never actually going to make any forward momentum in the game. So as far as that's concerned, I do appreciate it, because I feel like RPGs are either usually too easy and hand-holding, or they just get brutally hard towards the later third of the game, and I get sick of playing them and end up never actually finishing them. Now, interestingly, the developer of this game, Nihon Application Limited, made a bunch of RPGs very similar to Last Imperial Prince, but they also made a puzzle game for the PlayStation 1 called Ingacho. It's like WarioWare, except it's even weirder. And I have played that game before, but I didn't realize when I was playing it, it was the same developers of Last Imperial Prince. I have no idea how they got from games like this to Ingacho, but at some point in time, if I ever do another series on weird video games, I will definitely be showing Ingacho off. But you'll see here, now that we've beaten those enemies in the village, we've leveled up. And the game, just when you get to the point where you feel like you're not quite powerful enough to keep moving forward, that's when the game levels you up. And you'll see that we got a lot of different stat attributes. And like any good RPG, there's definitely at least one item shop, there's a bunch, and we can buy different gear and flowers, which are basically our health in this game, and apply them to whatever characters we want to. And that's a lot of strategy too. And the nice thing is, this menu is in English for the most part, so you can see how the different bits of gear that you're using are going to apply to your attributes. So you don't really need to know Japanese to understand how to use certain items or elements of the game, and with the walkthrough that I will link below, you will be able to finish this one. And if you're looking for a game that you've never heard of before, if you want to play a new action RPG, you could do a lot worse than Last Imperial Prince. I don't currently have a physical copy, I had to burn this. I used to own one 13 years ago, and now that I played it again, and I have another PC-FX next to me right now, I'm definitely going to be adding it back to my collection. But you'll see here, now that we've talked to a few of the villagers and done a few things like killing the enemies in the village, we're going to get the innkeeper here to tell us that we need to move our companion to a different area. And what I've learned through Google Translate is we now have to go back out into the woods and get her a special type of berry to make medicine. The walkthrough doesn't tell you why you're going out to do anything, it just tells you the next item to look for, but that's basically how this entire quest kicks off. Our companion was hurt, and we now have to talk to the townspeople to get information and go find those berries to make medicine. But short of that, that is the Last Imperial Prince. This may be the last video in the series in the PC-FX. I'm not sure how I'm going to schedule it, so if it's the last one, we hope you enjoyed the series, and we'll see you next Tuesday with a brand new series, and if it's not, see you next Tuesday for another PC-FX game. Short of that, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps me out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.